Ann Burke is a registered nurse and longtime advocate for transgender people who live on Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard. She serves as a board member of the Cape and Islands Transgender Resource Fund and also acts as a counselor and facilitator of transgender social support meetings held twice monthly on the Cape under the auspices of Fenway Health in Boston. In this insightful interview with PFLAG Cape Cod's Rick Koonce, Ann, who is not transgender herself, explains why she took on a role as a committed advocate for transgender people. With a master's degree in counseling psychology, Ann shines a critical spotlight on the many challenges transgender people face, be it in navigating the legal and healthcare systems of Massachusetts or dealing with discrimination in housing and employment. When a transgender person comes out, they often lose their entire support system, says Ann. This often includes a person's family, partner, friends, neighbors, and job. Despite that, Ann says, quote, I have found transgender people to be incredibly resilient in navigating legal, financial, and healthcare obstacles, as well as a world that is often hostile and ignorant about who they really are. Welcome to Profiles in LGBTQ plus Courage. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You describe yourself as an ally to and advocate for the transgender community, and you work actively as a coach and counselor and facilitator of group discussions. You host a transgender support group here on the Cape. Before we get into anything else, tell me how you got into this work.
So my background actually is in nursing, and I was a nurse for a very long time, did community health nursing, did hospice nursing. When HIV was pretty rampant, that was my collaborative that I worked with within Fenway. And so that was really my first introduction into the LGBTQIA plus community. I then started with Fenway in 2016.
Fenway Health.
Yeah. Yes, Fenway Health. There was a position open for an advocate here on the Cape. And I saw the need for a community for the transgender folks here. And my passion has always been being a humanitarian, working for the, disenfranchised and marginalized communities. And I love helping people. And it's just so rewarding to do some great things for different people in that community.
Well, I know you run this support group. You also work individually with transgender folks. Is that correct?
Yes.
How do people find you?
Sometimes it's word of mouth. I am fortunate that Fenway Health, where I work, has my support group on their website. And then Joe from PFLAG Cape Cod also has it listed on PFLAG's website. And then sometimes people just Google and it comes up. In fact, yesterday I received an email that I haven't answered yet from a trans client looking for a doctor here on the Cape that provides hormone therapy and trans care.
Can you talk a little bit more about the kinds of resources you provide, the information you offer people, and really what the presenting issues are that people bring when they meet with you?
So a lot of times people are looking for a therapist or looking for a primary care physician, looking just to talk to somebody around what's going on in their life. Oftentimes, if they're married and they come out as being trans, then things kind of go downhill quickly in the relationship. So do a lot of work around that. Do work around connecting people to medical providers that are looking for someone that's trans competent to provide their care. And I don't know, a ton of other things.
Yeah.
Connect them with just resources, connect them with the Needy Fund, or connect them with Falmouth Service Center, or connect them with any other sort of resource here on the Cape, for housing, for medical, for financial. And so I don't know whether this will fit into this question, but I started in 2021 a nonprofit called Cape and Islands Trans Resource Fund. And I did that due to the fact that there wasn't anything specific for the trans community here in the Cape. There's lots of mainstream resources, but oftentimes it's very upsetting for some of the trans folks to call in because questions that are asked, the people don't realize obviously who they're speaking to. So some things can be very triggering for the clients. So this is a fund that's all through donations and grants, and we pretty much pay for just about anything that you ask for.
And so the fund might provide financing for things such as what?
So we pay for medical co-pays. We've paid for a root canal. We bought someone an electric dryer. Just recently, Friday, as a matter of fact, I paid an electric bill for someone whose electricity was going to be shut off. And that was a chunk of money. It was over $600. We paid for a headlight. We paid for binders. We've helped people with first and last. Just about anything, gift certificates. We paid for a room for one of the members of the trans group that was going to Boston for surgery, and they lived way down Cape. And the person who was also a member of the group who was driving them lived up this end of the world, so the Hyannis-Mashpee Centerville area. So we paid for the hotel for the client to stay in, so the person driving didn't have to drive, an hour out of their way. And then we also gave the person driving a gift certificate for gas.
This is, I think, a very worthwhile topic in and of itself. And at the end today, let me get some information from you. You can share some information as to where people can learn more about the fund and maybe how to contribute to it, which I presume is something that is of interest.
Yes.
Yes. So in doing this work, you're not transgender yourself. And what have you learned about this population? Maybe what did you not know? What have you learned? And what is it that the wider world needs to know about the transgender world in order to be able to both understand them and embrace them as fellow human beings?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that they are really a resilient community. There's so many obstacles that they have to navigate, whether it's their family not providing any support. Youth suicide in the trans community is one of the highest in the country. They often have challenges with the medical providers, just a lot of different things. And when they share their stories, it's so empowering to listen to the resiliency that they have been able to continue. Some of that I feel that the group is really helpful in because it builds community and people can ask questions that they might not ask anybody else. And there's a wide range of ages in the group, so there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of younger people or people not so young that are, trying to decide, is this where I really belong? Is this my tribe? Coming to the group helps them do that.
And can you give us a sense, and our listeners a sense, of the range of stories, the kinds of situations that you've encountered both in counseling people one-on-one and in these support meetings? Can you give us a flavor for what you have experienced?
Yes. So counseling one-on-one, there's been multiple clients that do not have a supportive family, and that is really difficult because people want to be their authentic self and they're not accepted. So acceptance is a huge hurdle, not only with people's family and friends, but also just, in the United States. I won't speak worldwide, but in the United States. And there's a fear of not being accepted, because we all want to be accepted. The thing that I have realized is that just about everybody that I have met that is trans knew at a very young age that they were in the wrong body, that their birth sex assigned at birth is not who they are on the inside. So that challenges people. Some people have a lot of dysphoria, which causes a lot of anxiety and depression, and they know that they're not in the right body. So support is huge. It's huge. And there's studies that have shown if you just have one adult support as a teenager or a young person, that changes things almost 100%. There's a lot of fear of what's going to happen in the future. I believe, not to get political, but it's one of those political things this winter, there was conversation about transgenderism being eradicated. And there's a lot of false information out there. People just don't understand what it's like, and I feel like some people don't want to understand. There's over 400 bills that are anti-LGBTQIA in this country, and a lot of them are targeting the young trans community regarding the medical care, and they don't seem to understand that if they don't allow these young people under 18 to receive the medical care, there's going to be consequences on the other side. The suicide rate is already fairly high. It will be more.
It's such a grim statistic, and I'm curious, as you've learned about this world yourself and have come to navigate it, working with transgender individuals, why do you think there is such fear in the wider world about transgender people instead of curiosity?
That's a good question. I think people just can't wrap their head around it. It's a cognitive dissonance. So everyone is brought up thinking male, female, and then they can't or choose not to try and understand that. I even have friends that I have to say, no, that's a falsehood. No, that's a misconception. There's a book, well, there's lots of books out there, but one that I often ask parents to read or providers is Becoming Nicole, because it's a story about twin boys, and one of them realizes that they're not a boy. And their parents are supportive, which is great. It's been shown medically that there is a difference in some different parts of trans folks' brains and the hormones and the different things that it's like when being gay was considered a psychological problem, by psychiatrists. So, yeah, and I think people just don't want to learn. They're all set with what is what. And that, I believe, is more so for people that are 30 and above. If you think about when parents and grandparents were growing up, that wasn't even a word. People had no idea what it was. So there's a lot of challenges for some people, especially the older generation, to try and understand that.
It's interesting. I mentioned that I interviewed Zoe Zephyr from the Montana State Legislature, and she talked about the fact that her voice in the debate about transgender healthcare was silenced, and she was banished from the House floor. It wasn't even going to be talked about. It was, and it's interesting because I think the pushback that transgender people are getting today in many cases seems to be based on this fear, this unwillingness to learn, to embrace a wider view of not just sexual orientation, but gender identity. And to your point, I think you and I are of the generation, we were raised, you were male or female, and there was really nothing else. Of course, there was, it just wasn't talked about and it wasn't identified. And to that point, I'm recalling having interviewed quite a number of transgender people for this series, and so many of them said that when they began to have these feelings of being different and not being in resonance with their physical bodies, they didn't have a word for it. And so it seems to me it's a good thing that in the last 10, 20 years, people are being more open now about talking about the wide variety of human sexuality and gender identity.
And that's been around for a really long time. I don't think people realize that. Again, if people would take the time to get educated, either asking someone or doing their own research, or there's lots of books out there that, people can read if that's the way that they like to learn things. But the Native Americans, indigenous people, have had Two-Spirit in their culture for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I believe over in Europe and the Middle East and so forth, there's also been people in that culture that have been identified as not binary, as male or female. And I think it's rather interesting. It kind of is the same thing about people's thoughts about aliens or other life outside of us. I think it's very arrogant that people think that you can only be one or the other, and that's not true. And again, going back to support, it's so important for younger people, older trans folks also, but the younger generation really needs to have that support to let them know who they really are, to be their authentic self.
So let's talk about these support groups that you run. Are they virtual? Are they in person? Are they hybrid?
They're hybrid. So we meet on the first and third Wednesdays of the month, and we meet at the UU Church in Barnstable from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And we usually have 10, 15 people. Actually, our last meeting we had 18, which was amazing. So some people come in person, and then some people are on Zoom. We have someone that comes from Vermont to attend the group. We have people that live on the other side of the bridge, heaven forbid. And all different areas in the state of Massachusetts. And it's been very successful. As I said, I started it in 2018. We have about 30 plus members. It's not a therapy group. It's a social support group. So we're doing a get together coming up soon to celebrate the summer solstice. So it's a summer solstice queer formal/informal get together.
Okay. And share with us a little bit, if you would, some of the kinds of things people might bring to the group to discuss and to find support with.
So oftentimes when new people join that are just feeling out, is this who I really am? It helps them to cement those feelings, because there's a feeling of community and family. And people in the group are, as I said, different age range, have different experiences. Some people have had all the gender affirming surgery that's available. Some people just do the hormone therapy. Some people just dress. And so everyone's open for people asking questions. We've discussed, how to change your name legally, which is quite a few steps. And for people to know, you need to go to the court. Here in the Cape, I believe it's $180 that you pay the court to get your name changed. And then from there, you get your Social Security card changed. And then from there, you get your driver's license changed. And then you can do whatever else you want, the bank, passport, student loans, whatever it is. But there's a sequence that has to be followed, and it's an expense all the way down. So the Trans Fund helps people with that also.
I think you told me that in many cases, transgender people are underemployed. They don't have a lot of financial resources. Fair to say?
They do not. There's a lot of discrimination in employment. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but trans adults have a pretty high level of poverty, lack of housing, lack of job, lack of healthcare. And just overall, again, support is just so huge.
And is their status as being in poverty, is it as a result, in your experience, from the people you've dealt with, because they've been sort of overwhelmed with this issue that has kind of taken center stage in their lives?
Yes, yes, that's a lot of it. And oftentimes people lose their support system,
When they come out.
And so that's devastating in itself, never mind possibly losing your job, which they're not supposed to do in the state of Massachusetts. However, we know stuff happens. And just not having a partner anymore, or not having the job, or, being harassed. I've had clients that are harassed by neighbors or people in their buildings. And that's not always the trans community. Sometimes it's people of, the gay and lesbian community also.
Yes. You mentioned the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, and I think we want to presume that here in Massachusetts, things are easier for transgender people, but is that in fact true? And if not, what are the challenges that are likely to continue to be challenges for a while yet?
Right, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. My brother used to always tell me that. You don't live in a state. So, we are very fortunate here. We have very progressive legislation, so that's great. But there's still things that happen. There's still people that are discriminated in the workforce, discriminated for housing. Medical care here on the Cape is really lacking for the transgender community. So many people have to travel to Boston, which can also be an obstacle if you don't have a car, or, if you don't like to drive in Boston, or you want somebody to be with you. So there's a lot of different pieces to that. Again, we are fortunate here, and hopefully to stay that way with the progressive legislators that we have now. There are some good facilities. Fenway Health obviously has a trans health program. Boston Medical Center has a program. Mass General has a program. Children's Hospital has a program for younger, although everybody, Fenway, BMC, and Mass General also have a trans youth program.
Let's talk a little bit more, if we can, about Fenway's program specifically. What kinds of resources and support is provided? And if somebody wants to find out more, how do they go about that?
So I'll start backwards. So to find out more, they should go on Fenway Health's website. There's a tab that says Care and Services. And then on that, you would click transgender. So our youth program is really awesome. We have a youth coordinator who is non-binary, and they do a informational youth and family support group. I believe it's the second Tuesday of the month, and that's virtual. A lot of our clinicians are specifically trained in transgender care, especially for youth. We do a lot for the LGBTQIA plus community in general as far as healthcare is concerned. And we do have that trans health program that also has a support group for people that live up in the Boston area. The doctors at Fenway in the trans health program also are helpful with getting referrals for surgery and knowing the right doors to open. The trans advocate and the program coordinator work really, really hard with insurance companies to make sure things can get covered, and provide a lot of support for the trans community, for people that live up in that area, and then from people that will travel from the Cape to Boston to get their care.
It's wonderful to know about these resources, and I think it'll be valuable for our listeners to know how to go about approaching Fenway Health, among others, for that purpose. And well, just a few more questions, Ann. And again, thank you. I think this is a real public service that you're providing, because I think transgender folks, or people who think they might be, they need a source of support, a place to go to find out more, to educate themselves. And going back for just a moment, you and I were talking about this the other day, in terms of some of the presenting issues that you have encountered as a one-on-one a counselor to others. I think we talked about the fact that sometimes people come in, they're exploring, they're wondering if they might be transgender, but they also might be in a place of potentially bargaining. I don't know. I don't want to be this, or I don't think I am, but I need to. Can you talk a little bit about what you encounter in the way of people's maybe debates with themselves?
Right. So and that's a great question. I often encourage people to come to the group. And if not the group that I run, then maybe a group that Fenway runs, or there's some other support groups for younger people. Just to clarify, my program, which is the violence recovery program that I work for Fenway, we can only service clients 18 and above. So, but I do get a lot of referrals or people looking for information that have younger children. So we'll send them that information. And again, sometimes people want to jump in and see a therapist, but that might not be the best to begin with. It's important, I feel, to find your community, find your tribe. And that's what the support groups do. Not just mine, but other support groups. And a little plug for a group that Scott Fitzmaurice and I started as of Saturday was our first day. We are now running a once a month social support group for trans non-binary questioning youth ages 5 to 12, because there is really nothing here on the Cape for that. And I think the struggles that people have is they've known their whole life pretty much that they're not who everyone sees them as, and trying again to go back to that acceptance, to have people support them, understand them. There's a misconception about young people getting puberty blockers or hormones, and a lot of that is it's a misconception. It's not true. Things can be given, and if people stop, it might take time. It might not be 100% back, but hormones leave your body just as we get older. Women lose estrogen, men lose testosterone. So it's a natural process for everybody. It's just not viewed that way. And it's important. I try to have people make sure they connect with someone that provides trans care, that knows how to provide trans care. That's a key piece. I've had clients tell me that they actually teach their doctors, which I guess is okay, but not everyone feels comfortable with that. And just to take their time, not to rush into anything. Take your time, maybe, continue to come to a support group, possibly dress how you feel, who your authentic self is when you go to the support group. Interview at a couple of doctors, whether it's BMC or Fenway, Mass General. Down here, we have an amazing nurse practitioner at Duffy Healthcare that is trained in trans care. And it's like anything else. If you're making a big decision, if I'm buying a house or buying a car or going on a long trip, you do your pros and cons and you do your research. And that's important to do. But again, community and acceptance is huge.
Oh, it sounds like it is, and it sounds like you're really helping to lay the foundations for people to find that support. So, what's your advice to parents, Ann, who may have a transgender child, somebody that has come out to them, or they may just want to educate themselves more about it? How can they be supportive of their children?
Education, again, going back to education. So PFLAG, PFLAG Cape Cod or Boston or other places that they have PFLAG is a great place for parents to get support. The Fenway Youth and Family meeting that I spoke of earlier is another great place. It's not always wonderful to do the research on the internet because you might not find that it's 100% correct. I'm always able to help, or willing and able to answer parents' questions, which I do get emails around that. People say, hey, so-and-so told me to, check with you about this and that or whatever. So I do that. I act sort of as a case manager for a lot of the trans folks that are in the group, plus my own Fenway clients.
So if people want to be in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So my email, which is A Burke, Burke, at fenwayhealth, all one word, .org. And I'm happy to answer questions and see what I can do. I've, referred people to Health Imperatives, which is here on the Cape and a lot of different areas in Massachusetts that also does hormone treatment and provides some other supports too. So there is stuff out there. It's just trying to find it and knowing who the people are that you need to connect with. And actually, I believe might be going on 2 years now, they actually have a transgender health clinic up in Northampton, which is like woo-woo, because those people had a long ride to come to Boston. So that's great.
Well, Ann, as we've been talking today, it sounds to me like you're not only an ally and advocate, but a wonderful information intersection, somebody that people can reach out to learn more. Well, as we wrap up, let's go back and just talk for a minute about this fund. Where do they go? What's the website they should visit?
So we have a website. It's capecodtransfund.com. And on there, there's a form. There's a big button that says request for funds. There's also a place for people to donate, and there's information about that. We are a nonprofit. We have a fiscal sponsor, which is NOT Interfaith, which I'm so grateful for, because we wouldn't have been able to do this without having a fiscal sponsor. And there's a lot of information on there also, different resources for different, medical things or just resources in general. There's a lot of info on there. And as I said, we do just about anything within reason. We have a board. We have 3 executive members, myself being one of them, and then we have a handful of committee members. I am the only non-trans person on that committee, but it's, we do so much. It's just it's so rewarding and so helpful to other people that I'm extremely grateful that we do get donations. So we apply for grants. We do have we have a few people that give us money every single month. It's not a lot, but it doesn't matter because it helps out. And we have done fundraising events at some of the Pride events that are coming up. We'll be at Cape Cod Pride here in Hyannis on July 22nd. We have a table, we have information, we have T-shirts that we sell. And so that's another way that we try and make some money to help people out.
Wonderful. So, Ann, as we wrap up, is there anything I haven't asked you about that has come up for you as we've spoken that you would like to share with our listeners?
Just a couple of statistics, maybe, just for people that
Please
are wondering about dysphoria and suicide, death by suicide. So the Trevor Project, which is a really great resource for younger people, they have a live chat all the time, and lots of information on there for the youth. So 1.2 to 4.1% of adolescents report having a gender identity that's different from their assigned sex at birth. And that's a 2021 statistic. Also, 45% of the LGBTQIA plus community youth seriously considered attempting suicide. Nearly 1 in 5 trans and non-binary youth attempted to take their own life. And that rate is much higher among people of color, and particularly in the Native and Indigenous cultures. The other piece that is important, I think, for people to realize is November 20th is International Transgender Day of Remembrance. We have a vigil every year. This year we're doing it on November 19th at the UU Church in Barnstable. So what the vigil is we are honoring and remembering the trans clients, people, community that have died in that year from the year before. The large majority of that are often women of color. The statistic can sometimes be as high as 64%. So they are, again, a resilient community, the trans community, and I love that about that, and I love being with them and helping them be resilient and stepping forward and being their authentic self. A quick story, a young client that I have, male, identifies as queer, he, him pronouns, was in a situation off Cape that there was a lot of transphobia. After multiple things went on, ended up down here in the Cape and came to the trans support group last month. And to see him so happy, so relaxed and laughing and just enjoying the group and saying, these are my people. My heart, even right now, as I'm telling you this story, I have goosebumps. It was just so amazing. And that's why I do this work, to help people be their authentic self in whatever way I can along their journey.
Well, Ann Burke, thank you for taking time to talk with us today. I think this interview will be a great resource to many, and I look forward to talking again. Thank you again.
Thank you, Rick, for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's interview. Founded in 1973, PFLAG is the first and largest organization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people and their parents, families, friends, and allies. We have over 400 chapters and more than 200,000 members and supporters nationwide. Our members come from every generation and live in cities, small towns, and rural areas across the United States. PFLAG is committed to creating a world where diversity is celebrated and all people are respected, valued, and affirmed. For more information about PFLAG, explore the rest of this website or visit PFLAG National at pflag.org.